For hundreds of years, the Tonkawa and Apache people lived on these lands, known as the Southern Plains, roaming near the Clear Fork of the Brazos River, hunting and living off the land. The abundant grasslands provided a rich food source for immense buffalo herds, which attracted the native people.
A lot of times the Comanche and the Kiowas would follow the bison from the northern plains where they came from, meaning the Kiowas and Comanches, and come into this region of the country. That includes Texas and New Mexico and Colorado.
The thundering herds provided food and other resources, such as hides for lodges and clothing items.
The Comanche and the Kiowa people, used about every part of the buffalo that you can think of, from the horn all the way to its hoof.
As a young America pushed west, settlers came to the grassy lands, intending to establish farms and ranches. It would be a good place to raise livestock and grow crops. The presence of settlers forever changed the nomadic lifestyles of the Comanches and Kiowas, who soon began raiding the American homesteads.
One of the first problems that the settlers encountered was the Indians stealing their livestock and taking captives.
Call them pioneers, call them settlers, what you want, but a lot of times they were the problem from a native perspective.
The Comanches and Kiowas would take the stolen cattle and horses and captives and take them to New Mexico and barter them to the New Mexico traders.
The native people established ways to defend what they felt was theirs.
Without military protection, the settlers had little choice but to join together for defense of their homes, which they did by establishing small family forts.
This is during the Civil War era, when there was no federal army in Texas, so the families were basically on their own.
Following the Civil War, in 1867, the U.S. Army established Fort Griffin. In addition to regiments of white soldiers, Fort Griffin became home to the African American men from the 24th Infantry and the 9th and 10th Cavalry, known as the Buffalo Soldiers. Tonkawa Indians also worked at the fort as guides for the soldiers. Thousands of Army troops came to the region. They built infrastructure and ultimately pushed the Indians out. As the Army moved into the region, another invasion began when American men began hunting bison on the Southern Plains.
Buffalo hunters would go out from Fort Griffin with their wagons and establish a base camp, set up their tents, and then from there fan out into the buffalo range, do their shooting, do their skinning.
They weren't buffalo hunters. In the Indian people's minds, in that case, there are people who came in and deliberately destroyed a very valuable part of Indian life. To come in and hunt and to eliminate, destroy for material gain.
This killing decimated the food source of the Indians, but the hunters helped expand the town of Fort Griffin, which served them as a center of commerce. The Army used Tonkawa Indians as scouts during the 1874 Red River War, which involved multiple battles against the Comanche, Kiowa, Southern Cheyenne, and Arapaho Indians. Lieutenant Colonel George P. Buell led the 9th and 10th Cavalry out of Fort Griffin. These troops joined Colonel Ranald Mackenzie, commander of the 4th Cavalry. They delivered the final blow at Palo Duro Canyon in September of 1874 by attacking the tribe's winter camps and destroying their supplies and more than 1,000 of their horses. Fort Griffin's strategic location as a supply post helped end the domination of northern Texas by Southern Plains Indian tribes. By the summer of 1875, these great Southern Plains tribes permanently moved onto reservations in Oklahoma, no longer roaming freely in northern Texas. The defeat of the Southern Plains Indians in Texas led to security for settlers, the decommissioning of Fort Griffin, and the subsequent demise of the town of Fort Griffin. also known as the Flat, a boomtown which had become a riotous place filled with buffalo hunters, cattle drovers, soldiers, and even outlaws and gamblers.
The legacy of Fort Griffin is the history, the buffalo soldiers that were there. They basically built the fort. The buffalo hunters provided a base of commerce and economy.
It's not just prairie land, it's not just grassland, it's more than that to me as a person. It's an area of land that has still the spirit of our Indian people in it at times. A lot of the culture that's here is still here.
Today, Fort Griffin stands as a monument to the frontier experience and a merging of cultures: Indians, pioneer settlers, soldiers, and buffalo hunters. The Indian people were removed during the 19th century period of westward expansion, but their spirit and ties to this land remain, along with the West Texas culture that was shaped by the conflict.